Hi guys, I'm Erica. Welcome to Hack Your Health. So this is a 1 year update for being fistula free. So for those of you who have watched my videos about fistulas or about the Sutra treatment that I got, I thought I would just make a video to make sure that everything is still okay and update you on how I feel 1 year after being declared fistula free. I got Sutra treatment in Bangalore from Dr. Bhatt, but you can go to a lot of different places in India. That's just where I had heard was good, so I went there. And I'm very grateful for the Sutra Support group on Facebook because that's how I found out about Dr. Bhatt. And there's a lot of really inspiring stories and people and community to be found there, so that's been really important to me even still to this day, because I still enjoy connecting with other people who have fistulas because I find that it's such a unique problem, and I find that it's hard to talk about with people who have never experienced it before, and I just really value that place where people share with each other and help each other. And basically that's why I make these videos as well, is just because I know how hard it is to live with a fistula, and I just really want to support other people if I can and give them a place to share their stories on the comment section or anything else. So the last video I made was a 5-month update video, I believe. So at 5 months, I was still experiencing some, let's say, urgency, where when I, needed to use the area involved, it wasn't quite as much absolute control as would be considered normal. I think because the scar tissue was still hardening and the area was still healing. So I never had any problems with incontinence or anything like that, but I did have a feeling of urgency, and I don't know how else to describe it. And now that's completely gone. I also had some sensations during the first few months while it was healing, and they were kind of just feelings. It wasn't pain or anything, but I could just feel the area in a certain way, and I think that was also because it was healing. So that also doesn't happen anymore. So at this point, I've returned to completely normal kind of Western habits in terms of using the washroom. I don't use a bidet or anything else like that, even though many people who have had fistulas and recovered do that, and I think it's actually healthier. It just doesn't really fit in with my life and my lifestyle very well, so that's why I don't do it, and I don't need it. And yeah, I just keep kind of normal practices, and I don't have any incontinence, I don't have any pain. I do have some scarring, but to be honest, most of it is from the surgeries that I had in Canada. One main surgery that I had in Canada that left a lot of scars. This is just something very minor, and who really cares? Yeah, and I've noticed a huge change in my energy since not having a fistula, because I had it since I was 19, so basically I didn't know what it was like anymore not to have a fistula, and my entire sort of adult life had been really, really dragged down because now I find, for example, when I work in the film industry, and we have 60-hour work weeks instead of 40-hour work weeks. So when I'm on a season of a show, it's 60 hours a week every week. And before, when I did that, when I still had the fistula, I was so exhausted that I could barely function. By Friday, I could hardly even process thoughts because I was just so exhausted. And I was constantly obsessing about the fistula and needing to do sitz baths, and I would do it as soon as I got home, and there's this constant level of discomfort and stress. And I think just because my body was constantly fighting some sort of potential infection, or perhaps minor kind of infection, not full-blown abscesses anymore, but there was always just that sense of exhaustion that came along with it. And after living with that for so many years, now when I do a show and I'm working these 60-hour weeks, I have tons of energy. Like, even though I don't have much free time, the time that I do have, I still have energy to do things. And that is a huge difference for me. So if you're considering like, oh, maybe I should do it in a few years, or, trying to plan it, I would try to do it as soon as possible, because really the quality of life change that I've experienced between having a fistula and not having a fistula, even though it wasn't abscessing, is really, really huge. I've noticed way more energy. I've also noticed a really big difference in my case in terms of self-esteem. I think that having the fistula caused me to feel really dirty and depressed, and I also felt really hopeless, like I couldn't do anything about it, and it just went on and on and on, and it became like this obsession, like years and years and years of just obsession, and this feeling of almost like a worthless kind of feeling whenever I thought about it, which was pretty often, just because it felt so dirty, and I didn't like having it, and I felt ashamed. And I'm not saying that everyone needs to have those feelings if they have a fistula, but that's definitely something that I felt, especially I think maybe because like being a young woman and just kind of the feelings that go along with that, maybe in the first place tied in with having a fistula, it just was not good for my self-esteem at all. And since then, I just don't have that feeling anymore. Like, I just feel like whole or clean or complete, or I don't need to feel ashamed of myself, and of course I never needed to, but that's how I felt. So I feel like emotionally it's really lifted this huge burden off of me as well, not just due to my energy physically, but also my self-esteem. So of course there's nothing to feel bad about if you have a fistula. It's not your fault. I just think that when you have an issue like that in that area that's sort of leaking or whatever, it's sort of can be hard to feel good. That was my experience, and it may not be your experience, and I hope it isn't, because it's just a waste of energy to feel that way, but that is how I felt. And I've also found that my ability to make goals has really changed. I think because for so many years what I wanted the most was to fix the fistula, and I was really obsessed with it, and that's all I really, really wanted. I just felt like that is what I wanted, and combined with the lack of energy and everything else, I think that it really became a huge stumbling block for me, where even when it came to making a plan, since I knew for years before I did it that I needed to get Sutra, and I couldn't afford it basically, but I knew that it was going to be something that I needed to do, and I knew that it would take a long time. So I never wanted to make any long-term plans, and because it was always like, but what if, or I do that, what if, and just psychologically, I think that because it was the thing I wanted the most, it was very distracting from having and working towards other goals. So I think that having it just fixed and dealt with, and the finances of having to save up that much is now completed and done, and just the mental block that came along with it, and all of those different factors that come along with that sort of looming need or possibility, the removal of that has made it so much easier for me to be clear about my life, and make goals and work towards things and have the energy to do them. So anyways, I'm just kind of rambling on and telling you about, how I feel in regards to this fistula and it being gone for a year, basically because that's the only kind of update that I have. Because in terms of my health, it has not come back. I haven't had any further problems. I don't think it ever will come back. I never had any imaging or checking from any doctor or MRI in Canada. to me, it seems very pointless, partially because the wait list is just so long that I don't want to put myself through the stress of having to try to get imaging. But also I feel like it's unnecessary because the doctor in India did check the area very thoroughly, and there was no fistula at that time. And because after living with one for so long, I do know what it feels like to have a fistula, and I definitely don't have that feeling anymore. So I would say that that means that the fistula is really gone. But for those of you who may want like extra proof, I really don't have any. But at the same time, I'm not really promoting or encouraging any specific treatment. I'm just saying what worked for me, because after 7 years, I finally found a solution which I did not have available to me in Canada. So basically I was hoping that by making this more public information that perhaps other people could deal with their fistulas in a shorter amount of time and be able to move on with their lives sooner, because I kind of have the feeling of, having a lot of time wasted because I had to deal with it for 7 years instead of, a few months or 6 months or however long it would have taken to deal with had I had the information available about the treatment. So that's more what I'm trying to do, is just share information so people can make more educated choices. But I'm not a doctor. This is just my story. So in terms of, am I glad that I went to India and did Sutra instead of getting any treatment here, even though it was really expensive, even though it was really hard, even though, I couldn't work for the 3 months I was there and la 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 la, I would have to absolutely say yes. And the reason is, for one, I think that it was a really important experience for me to have, partially because I connected with other people who had fistulas while I was there and online. And I felt like I got this community that I probably really needed. And also, I just trusted the process so much more. I trusted the doctor so much more. I was really treated with respect and compassion and care, which I did not ever receive in Canada. In my specific case, that was not part of the deal. And I didn't have to spend years on waiting lists, which I did in Canada. I could just go there, have the surgery, come home. Like, it was just much simpler. As well, it's financially difficult, but I just wanted it to work. I didn't want to have surgery after surgery and risk incontinence again and again. I just wanted to have an answer to my problem, a way to get to that answer, a goal, and then do it. And I felt like that's basically what I did. And I feel like that was the best thing I could do. And especially now that I have more energy, easier to work, more confidence and whatnot, I feel like moving forward, it's just a lot better now. So yeah, considering that there weren't any options in Canada that were available to me because I have a history of Crohn's disease, which is not active and hasn't been active for many years. Basically, I was never eligible for the surgeries here anyways, so it wasn't really deciding between them and Sutra. It was more deciding between a ceton and either a ceton or no treatment and Sutra. So it's probably different for people who are eligible for surgeries in their home country. Then you'll have more of a decision to make about whether to do those surgeries, which could potentially be riskier or less effective for complex or deep fistulas, especially. If you have a very shallow fistula, then fistulotomy is likely okay. But like I said, this is not medical advice at all. This is just what I think about the fistula treatment that I got. And in my case, I think it was definitely the right thing for me to do. And I'm incredibly grateful for that. So yeah, that's basically a 1 year update. I don't know that there's really much more to tell you, and hopefully you've gotten something out of this and it hasn't just been too much rambling. And thank you so much for watching, and I'll probably do a 2-year update, I suppose, just to let people know that everything is still okay, even though I don't know what there is to say at this point. You might enjoy some of my other videos if you just want to see videos that I'm making, but at this point they're not very much related to fistulas. Some of them are related to Crohn's disease, and some of them are completely unrelated, so it's up to you if you want to subscribe. And please feel free to leave comments. I really like hearing people's stories about having a fistula or healing a fistula or things that they've tried, and I'd really like to hear from you. And I like basically that there's some kind of community around it. That's really important to me. And yeah, so anyways, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you with an update video in a year. Okay, bye.